Say you have to write a final paper. So you have to do a lot of writing and you know it's coming. Let's say for, I guess, is the term non-neurodivergent, something like that? Somebody who's
Mhm.
comfortable writing. Let's say you have to walk a couple kilometers. It's going to be annoying, but you're going to get there. You might be, you're going to be tired at the end. For
Mhm.
someone with dyslexia, instead of walking across town, you're walking, let's say, up the CN Tower. So
Wow.
like same distance, but the the taxation on your melon, you're going to be okay for a little bit, and then it's just going to be so exhaustive. You're going to have to take so many breaks, forget what floor you're on, but still have to keep going, and you're going to be a mess by the time you finish. I don't know if it's a perfect analogy, but I think it is in that area, that lane.
Yeah. Welcome, everybody. We today have Dallas Randolph Soonias for an interview today. Dallas Soonias is a board member of the Red Pheasant First Nation. He became the first Indigenous athlete to compete for the men's national volleyball team, and he did it for 13 years, playing professionally around the world. Dallas is also an advocate for the Indigenous athletes, but also for readers and writers with dyslexia and dysgraphia. Despite having been diagnosed with learning disability, he graduated from the University of Calgary and with a degree in psychology and a graduate certificate from the University of British Columbia in high performance coaching. And after coaching college and university volleyball, he also became an on-air analyst for CBC Sports, where he will be covering the Olympic Games in Paris this summer, which is kind of cool. He's also a filmmaker, and after producing short films, award-winning short films, he is currently in pre-production for a feature film. So a lot of great qualities. Welcome, Dallas, and thank you for coming to this interview today.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Awesome, awesome. So I'd like to know a little bit more about you. So how did you like within the context of dyslexia and dysgraphia, where did you grow up and how was your childhood like growing up?
I grew up in Red Deer, Alberta. Um, in terms of dyslexia and dysgraphia and everything, I'm pretty sure it was kind of aware that there was something going on. Um, I'm quite tall. I'm 6'7", 6'8" ish. I think I was always tall. I never had like a big growth spurt. I was just always tall. So I think, and I was very physical, very active in the classroom, like probably disrupting teachers when they want us to sit there but that just wasn't me. So I think teachers may have understood that there's something going on with this kid's inability to write correctly or read correctly or on the same level as the other kids, but they may have just thought, well, maybe there's something going on at home, or maybe he's just like his body is developing, maybe his brain isn't developing as fast. Who knows? But I don't really blame any of the teachers because they had, 30 kids ripping around. I have one kid, my son, and I can barely keep up with him. So I can't imagine keeping up with a room of however many. That being said, I remember being in grade school, doing some sort of testing for my writing, maybe trying different grips, different rudimentary things. Yeah, it just didn't. I it got better up until like grade three, and then it was just that's how good. I still write like I'm in grade three. It's embarrassing.
Interesting. And how did you feel at the time as a kid? Like, did you feel excluded or was it just like a difference in personality type thing for you? How was that?
I never really felt excluded because it was just me. It was normal. It was my normal. I didn't know what the other normal was really. I just knew the girls in the class could write the beautiful little bubble letters and they could write my name so like way better than I could. Um, But now that you asked that, I do remember a situation in grade six where the teacher took me out of the class. I'm not sure if I was in trouble or something, but we were looking at notes I had taken, and she said, "Okay, well, what did you write right here?" And I looked at it, and I couldn't read it. Like I couldn't read my own
Oh,
writing. Um, and I think she may have felt like I was being difficult, but I remember realizing I can't read my own writing, and I got very upset inside. Um, but then she could read it for some reason, but I think maybe out of context
wow.
or something. Um, but yeah, I'm just not a good writer, you
That's
know.
interesting. What grade was it when that happened? Or
That
how
would have
old
been
were
in
you?
grade six. So does that make me 12 or 13 or something like
Something like
that?
that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you got angry, did you do anything about it? Or you just got angry and kind of faded off, or did anything
I think
change?
no, I don't think we ever I don't think so. I think people just assumed, well, this guy's an athlete, like he's gonna play sports, that's his strength. Which isn't wrong, you know, like it's not like I was like my grades were suffering because the way, you know, grades are graded.
Mhm.
You need to be able to read and write and whatnot. It's not as though wasn't intelligent. It was, I guess I just had a different mode of learning.
Mhm.
Um, it wasn't until college that we started to, well, someone had an understanding of what might be going on. So I somehow got to college barely, and I was playing volleyball at Red Deer College, and my coach was actually one of my professors for I think it was a coaching class. It was a class on high performance coaching, and I'm sitting in the class. Well, first off, I think, oh, I'm gonna just breeze in this because like he's my coach, he's got to pass me. You know, this is easy, baby. I just got to show up. Turns out that wasn't the case. The man is a historically great coach. Um, but I'm in class listening to the lecture, you know, sitting back in my chair, like taking everything in, like the slides, what my professor's saying, and everyone around me has their head down and is furiously writing notes. Um, I thought nothing of it. In fact, my coach pointed it out to me years later that he thought something might be going on when everybody else is taking notes and I'm just absorbing it into my brain. Um, Now, he claims he told me somewhere in that era, 2003, I guess, or 2004, um, hey, maybe you should get tested to see if you have dyslexia or something. And I'm an idiot at this point, and I'm like, no way, we're good. Like we're playing volleyball, like things are good. We're gonna win this national championship, which we did. So like all good. Um, but apparently he definitely knew because he also had a psychology background. He knew that something was going on. Um, so then I spent 15 some odd years playing international volleyball all over the world and whatnot. My body explodes at a certain point, as does every athlete's, and I have to retire. And I had 1 year to finish to get a a bachelor's degree. So I come back and I'm 32 or something at this point, and my body is broken. My brain still works. I'm taking statistics. You
Mhm.
have to take statistics, um, and I understand the concepts. Turns out the same thing is happening. I'm understanding the general idea of each of the concepts we go through. But when it comes to the testing, I'm blowing it. Like something is going on. And what we realized is I'm getting the right answers for the wrong numbers.
Mhm.
So for example, one night I'm doing homework with my wife, who is a teacher, and she has none of these issues. Um, we have the homework on a projector in our house, and she has the laptop. So I'm trying to like read the equation off to her, and so she can like write it down. and this is what we're doing. Pardon me. And I'm giving her the wrong numbers. And she's looking at her paper. She's looking up at what I'm looking at. And she tells me, Dallas, that's not the number. Like those aren't the
Huh.
numbers. I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So we switch it up. Um, and then it keeps happening because we were doing homework for, 45 minutes. And she's like, you should like there's something going on here. And again, I brush it off. I guess I'm just powering through, thinking maybe I'm just really tired, which my issue does get way worse when I'm tired.
Okay.
Um, so I go to do I go to speak to my statistics professor in her office. I completely forget what about, but she thought I was there to review an exam. So we sit down in her office and she pulls up my exam right away and we start going through questions. I'm like, okay, I guess we'll do this because I'm not doing that well in the course. Um, and she asks me the question, I give her the answer, and we keep going, and I'm getting the vast majority of them right. And then she stops and she says, something is going on. You
Hmm.
understand these concepts, but it's not reflected in your results. Let's get you tested for whatever. And
Finally.
I believe at that point I was like, that sounds expensive, you know. She said, no, there is some funding for it. I think she's able to recommend stuff because she's like the dean. She was the dean of something or other. Um, so after that semester, the summer started, and I did 8 weeks of testing with a psychologist.
Wow.
Um, and what we did, there's a huge document that explains everything, like legitimately, like War and Peace type thing. But the takeaway is I'm dyslexic, or I have dyslexia, I have dysgraphia and dyscalculia,
Wow.
um, but I'm quite intelligent in other places. So going back the next semester in university, same professor, statistics, um, the next statistics, I didn't have to repeat it. Um, we did some accommodations and whatnot to when it came to exams and just the way I absorbed the knowledge. And right away, my grades improved like 20%, which
Wow.
kind of blew my mind. Um, so yeah, it turns out just the way the psychologist that I worked with for those 8 weeks explained it at the end was you look at everybody's brain like a slice of Swiss cheese, and everybody, Swiss cheese, it's got those like holes or
Hmm.
whatever. Everybody has holes in whatever their brain makeup is. But everybody also has strengths. Like for example, I know how like I was a professional athlete
Hmm.
for forever, for too long. I know spatial awareness. I know how to balance a lot of moving thing, like literally spinning plates. I know how to deal with the physical world and calculate things like very exact. Um, but if I want to read a book, say if I want to read a final exam and I'm in a room full of people, the more I want to read that exam, read the question, the more my mind wants to splinter on it. The more I can't, I struggle to read it word after word after word. My eyes want to jump forward and jump down. And it's as though it can get to a point where my eyes just want to take in the page all at once. So when you're doing statistics, it's quite difficult to do it that
Yeah.
way. Um, and I think that's part of being an athlete, but also part of the learning issues that I have. Anyways, all that to say, like, yes, there's parts of the intellect or whatever that I might struggle with, but I found ways to use the parts of my brain that do work fairly well.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Now
That's really
you've asked me
cool.
one question. I
Yeah,
should
that's awesome.
shut up and let you ask
No,
more
no,
questions.
no. It's good because we don't know enough. And that it seems like there's such a difference between one person that has dyslexia and the other type of thing. So just to start to understand how it feels, what it is, and how the brain perceives things is fascinating when you're explaining that she can actually taking the entire page. It gives you a completely different perspective than kind of just going word by word. And you can probably grasp something that's different than somebody else just because you can actually take in the entire page all at once, which is kind of interesting.
Well, that's kind of the issue. I can't take the whole page in all at once, but I'm definitely doing part of that. I
Mhm.
think it has something to do with being an athlete in the sense that you've trained yourself as your arousal level goes up, your eyes, you want to take in everything around you when you're on a court, right?
Mhm.
So it's probably, I don't know if it's a chicken or the egg situation. Like maybe it's part of what made me a good athlete is I'm able to go and take in many things at once. Um, or maybe that was developed, pardon me, from being an athlete. So I don't know which came first, but I just found a way that I can use that, whatever that
Yeah,
skill is.
very, very interesting. Cool. And I was wondering, so when you were younger and you were at school, do you feel like you created some tricks to be able to sail through the class as fast as possible, or were you just avoiding it? Was there anything that you
No, I think I started to understand that this was really difficult for me.
mm,
Whatever whatever it was, like I realized it wasn't a situation where I could just sit longer and try to study more. It just didn't really make a difference. Um, yeah, there's things that other students could do just so easily, and I would bang my head against the wall with it, and I couldn't really get better at
mm,
it. So I think that was an issue, but I just took it for what it was and real and thought, okay, there's no way I can get better at this, but it's something that I have to do because that's what school is. So
definitely.
it wasn't until, my 30s that I figured something else out.
Yeah, beautiful. So it means that most of your strength, basically you kind of focus on your strength, which was sports and volleyballs, and that's basically kind of like what kept your
Yeah.
focus on doing something like you had a strength somewhere else. 'Cause I'm trying to imagine if you didn't have volleyball, like it would have been even more difficult, I'm assuming.
Yeah, very much so. I was lucky I had something else to that I excelled at. That being said, if I wasn't an athlete, I did like drama.
Oh,
In
nice.
fact, like when I went to high school, I took drama in the first semester and I really enjoyed it. Um, It turns out I was a really good athlete. So that started taking up all the time. And being in plays, being in the drama program, it takes up a ton of time as well. So I kind of had to like choose that lane, you know.
Yeah, very. And it's interesting how reading your biography, you're kind of bringing that back in a way by doing the films.
Well, yeah, like time is undefeated, as they say. So like every athlete gets beat by time.
Of course.
Um, but turns out like you can be creative until you're done. You can continue to make stuff forever.
Beautiful.
So I guess that's kind of where I've drifted back into. You know.
Nice.
I actually have a premiere tonight, a short film that me and my friends made. Basically, we're
That's awesome.
premiering it tonight at the Calgary Underground Film Festival. I got a shave, looking at myself. I got to clean up. Yeah,
Beautiful. Nice, nice. That's fun. Congratulations.
thank you. Thanks.
Um, to go back to the fact, so in terms of this, so was there anybody else in your environment as you're growing up or even now that also had dyslexia or something similar, or were you the only one?
I think there might have been one other fella in the class, like when I was in grade school. He had similar learning situations as me. I had another buddy in high school who had similar learning issues, and I guess I was a kid at the time, but I was also ignorant to it as well as to like, my man Mike is really smart. I wonder why he struggles with this as well. Because like we would try to study together, and I remember seeing like I can see none of this is getting through. Like when we're trying to study biology or something. And I'm thinking, I'm never going to remember this. And I could clearly see he's not going to remember it either. Um, so then we just went and listened to System of a Down or something, and just like tried to
Nice.
enjoy reading. Like it's yeah, that there's been situations where I've recognized something definitely going on. Um, and then getting to know some high level athletes in university, apparently like it's not uncommon.
Mm,
This some of the learning issues that I have are, I guess, fairly common in high performance athletes. Like it's almost as though stuff that helps you excel as an athlete might hinder your ability to, write a history exam or something. History is a bad example. Statistics, though.
interesting, interesting. And what do you think was missing at the time to be able to rectify the situation growing up and all the way to university?
Ah, I mean, I think there's just these teachers have so much that they have to pay attention to, you know? And let's say a teacher gave me some extra attention, which some did, obviously, along the way. It's not going to cure my dyslexia because that's just how my brain works. So you got to assume at a certain point, a teacher is like, I got to teach these other 29 kids, And then say on top of that, I have an attitude problem or something. And it's like, well, now I absolutely like lost cause. This kid's a lost cause. So I think teachers have a super difficult time trying to maybe not in the identification of something going on, but trying to quote unquote solve or help the issue. That's oof, that's tough. You basically have to take that child, I mean, get them tested, something like that,
Mhm.
and then make a whole bunch of accommodations. Um, that's just it's a lot.
Not easy. Yeah. Not easy for both for the kid either, I'm assuming. And do you think that the attitude might be caused by the fact that, I mean, the kid is smart, but it's just not like there's got to be a frustration. Do you think that could be the cause why that would actually also bring the kids to have an attitude because they're trying, doing the work, understand, but it's just not coming
Yeah, I
together?
think that's just kind of human nature. Like I
Mm,
remember trying really hard because I knew I was like not doing as well as I should, maybe letting somebody down, whether it's myself or my parents or something. But at a certain point, like over years, you're like, whatever, this is just it. Like what can I do? I'm gonna keep
mm,
trying, but like I know I'm gonna be disappointed. So, but we're gonna get
gosh.
through it, you know, got barely, which I barely did, but
Mm.
did get it done.
Speaking of parents, what was their involvement? Like, how did they know anything? Did you have a history of dyslexia within your family? Because they say that it's hereditary as well. Like, how's that for you?
Yeah, I don't think my parents, it's interesting. My mother's a psychologist. She was a lawyer before. And my father was I think he has a master's in education. He taught for a while. And then he became a lawyer, um, among other like so they're incredibly academic, which is wild considering where they came from, where they started from. That's a whole
Mhm.
other story. But I don't know that I think my mom recognized that something was going on. Is my brother certainly doesn't have these issues. He can write and read, and he reads a million books. Like this is not a problem for him.
Mm,
Um, but I do think she recognized something was going on, let's say with my ability to write. Um, see, this is another issue. I'm left-handed. So
mhm,
it is possible that when I'm in grade school, the educators, along with my mother, they're thinking, he's left-handed, so it's going to be awkward. Maybe that's why
wow,
this is happening, which is probably part of it,
mhm,
but turns out there was a lot more going on. Um, yeah, so I think my mom knew something was up, but what can you do? If you don't know, it's not like she knows, this is a clear marker of dyslexia. Let's get these accommodations for this child in grade 3 or whatever. She was
Interesting.
trying stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody was trying little stuff, but nobody really knew what was up.
So I'm assuming at the time they didn't really know that it was dyslexia then, or
I
they
don't
didn't
think.
even know that it existed.
Well, they probably knew it existed, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know because remember, I'm looking at it. I'm trying to remember it now as an adult, but I remember
Mhm.
the experience through a child's eyes. So, I'm trying to think now, looking back, what
Mhm.
were they probably thinking? And I think they probably thought he's left-handed, so he's going to write garbage anyway. He's a high energy kid. He's bigger than everyone. Um, I was always very like sociable. Like I think it was understood that I wasn't dumb. I wasn't
Mhm.
stunted, but maybe academics just wasn't for me.
Yeah, kind of like you're the sports guy, and that's kind of like the category, and it's
I suppose so, but even
Mhm.
in elementary, it's not like we had a drama program or anything, but I think like I think we had like I can remember we had a school assembly or something, and me and another guy got like a solo in a singing thing. So I think that was always in me. Maybe
Mhm.
it was like a release because I didn't have to write anything or
Good
read
point.
all
Yeah.
that much. You just put something in your head and then you perform it or whatever, you know.
Nice.
So maybe it was more I was just gravitating to anything that wasn't reading and writing. You know what I
Uh,
mean? Who knows?
so, so then now that you know it, you've gone through the process of getting tested and stuff like that. What are you doing differently that made it so that you're able to raise your grade by 20%? Like, what's the difference in?
So a couple things. I was able to take any exam that I deemed necessary. I'd be able to take it in a quiet room, in a instead of pardon me, with 100 other students in a testing room in one of the little cubicle thingies.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm not sure that that necessarily helped in the sense of the dyslexia or whatnot. I think that just helped me narrow in. Maybe everybody should do it that way if they're lucky. I think the biggest thing was I would get PDFs of the exam, and I'd have a laptop, and I would have the laptop read the exam to me.
Oh,
Um, so that way, my brain didn't have to worry about the interface of getting the text from a piece of paper into my brain through my eyes. Now we're interfacing through my ears when I guess I'm also looking at it as well.
mhm.
So the the mental bandwidth that my brain was using to try to get all of that information into my head and then try to figure out an answer to what it's asking me and then try to get it down again when I'm terrible at writing.
Oh,
There's a no there's a series of roadblocks in the way there. So having the ability to have the test essentially read to me like a podcast, like I love podcasts. And then for me to put the answer back whenever possible through typing, well, that takes away the issue of writing. Because even when I remember like writing exams, like with a pen or a pencil, that was an exhaustion for me as well. And I knew at certain times I'd be, well, I need to shorten this answer because I'm not going to get through it, that sort of thing. Whereas typing, it's like, this is no problem. Or it's not necessarily that it's no problem, but it's a heck of a lot quicker and easier. The interface is easier. I'm not trying to, yeah, but that being said, with my particular brand of dyslexia, even when writing, when I'm typing, I will put words in the other order because my brain will be like 3 words ahead, that sort of thing. But it's certainly not as bad as writing. And also the professor can read what I've written. If I write something with a pen or a paper, that's got to be knocking 8% off every exam just because they're like, this person's an idiot.
Oh, yeah.
This person's writing like a child. And I get it. That's why I very much prefer to type than write stuff out.
Mhm. That's such an interesting little switch that makes a huge difference. So I'm assuming, like for example, now that we have technology, voice note or voice to text would probably also accelerate your ability to answer what you need to answer quickly without having to figure. Because I never thought about the mental exhaustion of having to deal with one obstacle and then another, and then finally do get to your answer type of thing.
Yeah, I noticed right away I was an early adopter of voice memos and text and whatnot because people would always hit me back and be like, "You're the only person I know that does this." Like it's the best. Like you can understand tone, you can get through it so much quicker. But to your point, I think I realized sending a voice memo, that's just walking down the street. If I was to have to type out, let's say even in text, type out uh, a three idea answer or like a paragraph or two, that's like walking up the stairs. So then
Interesting.
by the third flight, you're like, I can do this, but I'm getting tired, you know? Um, I, I assume that's how it is for everybody, but maybe it's not, you know?
Maybe, who knows? So then I love this analogy. So if the voice note is walking, typing is going up the stairs, what is writing then?
Writing like with a pen.
Like the comparison.
Yeah, that's just falling down a mountain. I don't know, but it's like kind of all over the place, like
Nice.
difficult to follow.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
because there's numerous issues. Like I might put words in the wrong order. I might flip letters. I'm a terrible speller. I just cannot spell correctly. Um, yeah, it'd be
yeah.
rough.
No, but
Very.
it's a great analogy for people to understand the difference because I don't think we all, especially people that don't have dyslexia, have a grasp of how much it impacts everything else and how much more effort is required. Because it's not like it's visible, right? Like somebody who has
No, yeah.
dyslexia, you can make a difference between somebody who has and who doesn't have. You talk to them, like everything seems normal, and then all of a sudden we get to writing, and it's kind of like, but that person is normal type of thing.
Well, consider it like this. Let's compare the two. It's not apples to apples, but say you have to write a final paper. So you have to do a lot of writing and you know it's coming. Let's say for, I guess, is the term non-neurodivergent, something like that? Somebody who's
Mhm.
comfortable writing.
Traditionally, well, yeah.
Yeah. Let's say you have to walk a couple kilometers. It's going to be annoying, but you're going to get there. You might be, you're going to be tired at the end. For
Mhm.
someone with dyslexia, instead of walking across town, you're walking, let's say, up the CN Tower. So
Wow.
like same distance, but the taxation on your melon, you're going to be okay for a little bit, and then it's just going to be so exhaustive. You're going to have to take so many breaks, forget what floor you're on, but still have to keep going, and you're going to be a mess by the time you finish. I don't know if it's a perfect analogy, but I think it is in that area, that lane.
Yeah. That's really cool. I love analogies because like visually you can actually start to understand what it takes and what's required and how little changes, like you said, like the computer, like the voice note and all these type of thing actually makes a huge difference and actually put people at the same level to start. If you're starting a race, at least you can be at the same um, level as everybody else to get the same chance type of thing.
Yeah, it's all like the what we're talking about. I think it all comes back to the interface that you're trying to
Mhm.
take the information like through paper, like with your eyes or through your ears. It's just so less taxing for some people to listen to things like a conversation. Um, Now, I was never really embarrassed by it. I just understood it as something that I just have different than other people.
Mhm.
But a friend, a coworker friend, maybe I shouldn't call her friend. Um, she she hit me up through an email one day, because I was talking about dyslexia one day. Because her two kids are both dyslexic. She has kids, I think they're under 10.
Okay.
But shout out to her for like figuring it out, you know. Um, what she mentioned, and I hadn't thought about it this way, is if somebody right before the invention of the printing press had figured out a way for people to understand, well, information through some sort of auditory medium, like say the podcast was developed right before the printing press, well, then this would be normal, considered the quote unquote normal. And then people who like read things, information, people who listen to things with their eyeballs would be like, what is that weird business? You know? So it's more just kind of, I guess, microevolution or whatever,
Yeah, yeah,
how
yeah.
it's worked. You
The
know?
lack of diversity in the way that we invent things,
Yeah,
essentially. And we're
but the
slowly
point,
getting into it.
yeah, we're getting to it now, which is awesome. But the point being, it's not something to be embarrassed about. It's
Of
just
course.
something that is and must be dealt with, and then you're good.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, yeah. It's kind of interesting because I see it a little bit as almost like different cultures. Different
Yeah,
cultures, different nationalities. Like we're not, one's not better than the other. It's just like different things. And then it's kind of good to understand where everybody comes from and what they bring to the table, essentially.
yeah, exactly. It's you can take it on a personal level or to like a cultural level. It's the people are doing what's kept them safe. You know, when you look at their modus operandi, it's what has worked for them. It's not better or worse. They're just in a different situation.
Yeah. Right. I'll like broaden up our perspective, essentially.
Mm.
Speaking of different nationalities and culture like that, I was wondering if being both Korean or Ojibwe, if that had something or it influence when it comes to that dyslexia, or if it's something that's even um, not a problem, but if it's something that's talked about within the community or if it's affecting the community, because there's also a different language there too.
Well, I think you kind of hit it on the head in the sense of community. We grew up, my parents raised me and my brother in Red Deer, Alberta, which is a town in Alberta, which is very far from either of the nations I'm from. By the way, shout out Chippewas of Nawash. That's where I'm registered now. When I was born, I was registered at my father's nation, and now I'm with my mother's nation, but I consider myself a member of both. Anyways,
Of course.
we were away from both of those places. And as previously mentioned, my dad, well, they're both my mother and father are both so educated. They were working all the time. And now that I have one child, I can't imagine having two. I understand that it takes a village. It like that saying there's logic to it. Like it takes a village to raise a kid.
Mhm.
So I suspect my parents were kind of just doing the best that they
Of
could.
course.
Um, but maybe, who knows if there was a grandparent around more often, maybe they would be able to pick up on something because also it's just a matter of circumstance. All but one of my grandparents had passed on by the time I was like talking, you know.
Mm.
Um, and then my kokum was in Saskatchewan, not traveling a ton at that point. All this to say, I think being somewhat isolated may have, who knows, maybe we would have discovered something a little earlier, but maybe not, because maybe the grandparents would be like, oh, look at those kids. They're such good athletes. They're doing well. They wouldn't be thinking about reading. I don't know.
Yeah.
That actually, again, I know it's hereditary, but I know my kokum, the my grandparent, the one grandparent I knew, she was a prolific reader right up until she passed.
Oh,
Um, yeah, so it's just who knows? I'm the oddball, I guess.
yeah. I mean, it only means that there's more that we don't know about
Mm.
the whole situation, essentially. So
Mhm.
everybody's in a read. So do you read at all, or not?
No, I do. I do.
Okay.
It takes me a ton. It takes me so long to read. Um, the last book I read was The Future by Kathleen LaRue. but I had to read the physical book and also have the audio book in my ears to be able to get through it. I found it quite taxing. Um, the book previous to that is called Denison Avenue by Christina Wong, um, which surprisingly I got through very easily. And it's an amazing book. It's a piece of art. It's so much more than just a book. And what the way she arranged the pages, it wasn't just like a text of what like blocks, that
Mhm.
you go down and that's what the book. She chose to move the text around the page often. And then sometimes two columns with two characters speaking on one page. And the way she arranged the book, it made someone with a brain like mine far more easy to understand, to engage with, pardon, to absorb. And also, it's just an incredible book. So I found it easy to get through, and I really enjoyed it. And I could also picture the publishers when they got the manuscript being like, "What is this? Like, we're wasting so much paper. This is not a cheap thing to print in the first place, but
Mm,
it is truly a piece of art, this book."
nice,
Yeah, but bef previous to like the last five novels that I've read, I'm a big graphic novel guy,
nice.
um, which maybe is childish or whatever, but like I love having pictures and then the text, and then it just
Oh,
it works way
that
better for my brain.
it's such a cool, like I never thought about it because I'm a creative, so I love art and I used to read a lot of like graphic novels before, but never even thought about the fact that for somebody that has dyslexia, graphic novels are probably a lot more digestible.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's the visual. Well, also it might be specific because as we've talked about, my eyes like to they don't go narrow the more
Mm,
focused I am. They go wide. So if I'm really enjoying it, then I'm gonna take in more of the page.
yeah.
And
Huh.
yeah.
That is such a cool thing to do. So I'm going back to we're talking
Wait,
about
wait, wait,
film.
wait. Before
Oops,
you
sorry.
go on,
Yeah,
what
go
so
ahead.
what graphic novels were you into?
Oh, that's such a long time ago because I'm French native. I'm from Montreal originally. So
Hmm.
books like Natasha was one of them that I remember. I think les quatre as, like the four aces that it was called.
Oh, cool.
Um, what else were there? Billy Bull. Oh,
Hmm.
Tintin was another one as well.
Yeah.
I used to read so many. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love Archie's, of course. They used to have like all those little um
Oh yeah.
catalogs that you had like it's called dépanneur,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like
At the
convenience
yeah,
stores.
the
Yeah, yeah,
convenience store,
yeah,
dip in
yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
eventually I got into mangas as well. So yeah, a little
Love manga.
bit.
Love manga so much. Yeah. Cool.
Definitely. What was it? Oh yeah, in terms of like family and community. So you're saying so you have a kid now, so obviously it's something that you're looking into. Do you find that is there anything that you're doing differently to be able to make sure that if your kid has this dyslexia that there's um tools that are set up for him, or what are you doing that's different?
I'm sure it'll get to that point. Right now, he's 3, so he's not in school, so to speak. But I can see stuff in him that I assume was in me at the same age, in the sense that he's way bigger than everyone and he's quite social. Um, his language might be behind the other kids. Um, but I think his body's just like, let's grow this kid and then we'll worry about the other stuff, that sort of thing. As I mentioned, like I'm quite tall and
Mm,
my wife, his mother is 6'2". So like the kid, he's probably going to be quite large.
yeah.
Right now, um, I remember, and this is adjacent, but I remember being bigger than everybody. And I would get in trouble a lot for reacting to kids like picking on me, you know?
Oh,
Um, so that's my main concern now.
mm,
Let's say in daycare, he hits a kid Well, it might be because he got hit, but that part isn't reported
Sure.
because it's the concern is this big kid picking on this little kid, you know? Um, so I remember years and years of that happening to me.
Mm,
So that's the first concern. And then when he starts reading, I'm not even sure how I'm going to pick up on it, but maybe it'll slap me in the face and I'll be like, I know exactly what's happening. And
mhm.
then I'll try to figure out what the heck to do at that point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but at least I know I'll know enough to recognize it when I see it and
Yeah.
then try to figure out, okay, what do we do?
Yeah, I believe that there, because I'm, like I said, I'm new to this, but there are screening tests I believe that you can get. I don't know how young they have to be able to start being able to evaluate that, if that's a thing. But I'm also wondering, because I know the whole thing about if a kid is a little bit different, especially if you're bigger, like there's always preconceived idea that they're always the culprit, the same way as if you're a black kid in some areas, you're always the one that's going to be in trouble. So I totally get that that concern.
Yeah,
So
it's
things to do
real.
it.
It's tough.
Hmm.
But honestly, I think that if anybody has made it into the podcast this far, please understand that takeaway that I always try to leave with people is adaptability. Um, I've had a lot of luck, but also a lot of situations where I could have crumbled and probably wouldn't be here. Um, you got to stay adaptable, like nobody's in a perfect situation. I guess there's people who grow up in perfect situations, but for most of us, probably most of the people engaging with this podcast, like you're going to have some natural setbacks, but the key is figuring out how to make it work for you. Like that's how you do it. That's how you have any success, whether it's in sport or academics or anything,
Definitely, definitely. Speaking of which, like, what would, if you could give an advice to yourself as to your younger self, what, knowing what you know now, is there anything that you would want to tell young
I would
Dallas?
tell grade one Dallas, invent a 2018 MacBook Pro real quick so it can continue or something. Like I'm not entirely sure. Um, yeah, that is, yeah, what would I tell myself? I think at the time, I don't think there's much I could have done. Um, like I remember there's certain situations, like I mentioned turns out the core memory that popped in my head like 20 minutes ago, and I couldn't read my own writing and it was
Mm,
embarrassing. It's fine. It's not that I am or was dumb. It's just different. It's
mhm,
just different ways that I'm quite intelligent with and parts that I'm never going to get. So maybe don't beat your head against the wall about trying to figure that out because it might be one of the holes in my brain. Focus on what I can do and try to make that work, you
mm,
know?
beautiful. And
So I suppose again, adaptability, like figure out there's always a way to make it work.
yeah. So, did you receive any advice, or did you have any mentor that said something that kind of kept you going and not letting these things let you crumble, essentially, type of thing, and still thrive and be successful, really?
Um, I'm sure. I'm sure. I can't think of any one specific like speech that a coach gave me or
Hmm.
something or a teacher, but I do remember being encouraged that I was intelligent. It was simply this thing that I clearly sucked at. I think just the drive of being the youngest sibling and being used to being not bullied, well, almost bullied by your brother and his friends,
Mm.
but you're always competing. Like you have to compete for everything. And
Mm.
my brother's 2 years older than me, and he was a great athlete. And I wanted to hang out and play sports and
Nice.
whatnot. So I had a lifetime's worth of getting beat by kids that were always better and always older. So I think a lot of youngest siblings understand there's just fight, there's just compete in them. And I think often, even now, I'm not athletic anymore. I don't compete that way, but I'm in a different world. But the setbacks I find upset me so much that it's a very quick turnaround that it fuels me to succeed. And I'll dive into it even harder, almost bullheadedly in a slightly different way of like, no, I'm gonna get it done this way. Like it's gonna happen. Um, which I don't know if this is good advice or not. But
Well, I mean, it almost, at least the way that I receive it, it almost tells us that without having the challenge, you can't grow and evolve. But because of the fact that you have that challenge, that's what's, it's almost like sharpening a knife type of thing. You need the resistance in order to become better. Otherwise, what's going to
exactly.
happen? Type
Yeah.
things. One of
There's
the
that fun. Sorry, cut you
I
off.
was going to say, you just said it's like one of the benefits, it seems like. Mhm.
Exactly. You need a certain tasks need to be difficult, not too difficult that you won't get that you have no chance, but to grow, you constantly need difficult situations that are overcomeable.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's partially for me, like in terms of athletics, we'll say, always having my older brother and his older friends. Maybe my brother was certainly an incredible athlete. Maybe his friends were pretty good. So I had to be very, very good, you know, and be used to getting beat by the best and still competing.
Huh.
Um, so it was like that in athletics and in the academic and in a lateral move, the television and film industry that I'm in now.
Mm.
It's similar. There's always somebody much better, um, but you have to keep going with attainable goals, and you do keep growing at a fairly quick rate. Um, but as like for example, let's say I have an audition to do, I'm not going to read the script. I have to wait till I'm at home on my laptop, and I need to have it. I need my laptop to read it to me. What I found also is instead of taking the script with me and going to like a quiet place and trying to read it and get it in my mind, I read it once out loud into my phone, and then I listen to my phone over and over again. And I absorb it so much faster that way than trying to like read it, highlighter, like move a paper over it, that sort of thing. Like all the things that you were taught, uh, like on
Oh,
how to like learn and study for exams. That's never going to work. Referring to notes, like that ain't going to work. Yeah, you have to find a different way to absorb the information.
beautiful. That's so interesting because I took I didn't take the course, but I help with a course that teach people about how learning happens. Like they basically specialize in learning how people learn. And the whole highlighting and taking notes, they say like whether you have dyslexia or not is not a good way to actually remember
Is that right?
anything. Yep. So it's
Okay.
very interesting to see. That's why like there's something so interesting to learn about people with dyslexia because it broadens the understanding of how the brain works and how to really learn and understand things in different ways. Because when I remember when she was explaining, it's two professors from the University of Toronto, they were explaining how the way that they taught us how to learn is not necessarily effective. Like highlighting things and reading over it is not, you're going to forget it pretty much easier. So
Yeah.
there's something in there that's very, very interesting. Beautiful.
Did they go into what's more effective?
Yeah. I don't remember everything by heart, but there was things that were about um like reading or absorbing the information, but then afterwards is analyzing it. Like the learning is really allowing your brain to dump all the information that you learn, like almost like a draft, and to be able, they call it retrieval. So retrieve
Mm,
whatever you got out allows you, if I understand it properly, allows you to actually remember it. But just reading and rereading over and over again, it's almost like you need to question, like do like little tests and do like little exercise to not just learn by heart, but understand intrinsically in your own experience what did you
Mhm.
learn essentially. So yeah, there's videos on it about the like it's all been recorded. I think it's very, very, very interesting.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
because you can remember things when I relate it to something I already know. So you have a reference for
Yeah.
the retrieval.
Yes,
Um,
yes, yes. Oh my gosh, they talk about here. They talk about something about there's names about how the brain works and how if you don't know some of the reference of what they're talking about before, it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to actually understand. But if you have some, like for example, you know a lot about volleyballs. So if somebody teaches you something new about volleyball, because of the fact you have so much experience in it, you're going to learn the new stuff a lot faster than somebody who has zero knowledge about volleyball. And that's apparently the same for any topics. And to
mhm.
actually understand that difference between a kid who has the knowledge, like or baseball or whatever, and a kid that comes from another country and never heard about baseball before. So when you teach them something, or even when they have to read something about it, because of the fact that they know nothing about it, it's going to be super difficult for them to understand. So super
Yeah,
fascinating, super
it's
fascinating
totally
stuff.
abstract. See, my understanding is this is a big problem with IQ tests
Hmm.
traditionally, because
Yeah.
you need a frame of reference that is, say, predominantly Euro, well, European or Euro American
Yes.
or Canadian. Whereas if you're coming from somewhere else, well, you don't have, it's all abstract, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm sure I actually wrote an SAT like back in high school. I went to the US for a minute, didn't like it,
Oh,
came back.
nice.
But for the SAT, I mean, it's American, right? So there's nuance that is American.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's all about the reference.
Oh, 100%. I forget which other professor from on it as well. They were talking about this whole IQ testing, and we were discussing during the break about how it is very cultural based. And I remember when I took it when I was younger, even I knew because I'm of Haitian origin and was in Montreal, Quebec. And there's some of the stuff that they were asking, like I'm really good at problem solving, all these type of things. That was fine. But anything that had reference to history, and I forget my score, but it was still a high score, but it could have been higher. But because of the
Mm,
fact I don't have the cultural background of the history of, Montreal, Quebec, and all these type of things, I remember one of my friends was from here, and he's like, "Oh yeah, my grandpa was in the war and did this and that." I'm like, well, duh, obviously you're going to
yeah.
know that.
Yeah.
I'm not.
That would have helped. Frick.
Yeah.
Just got here. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. So little things like that. Beautiful. One last question we're about times like what's been the one of the gift or benefit from having this like culinary journey so far? Like there's people talk a lot about like the disadvantage, but there's a lot of advantage of being able to see or understand things differently. So what were some of the gifts or the benefits in your experiences?
I mean, I touched on it before, and I don't know if it's a chicken or the egg situation, but whatever's going on in my brain probably aided in my ability to be a professional athlete for a long time. Whether it's the problem solving, because it's not like you make the national volleyball team and that's you stop learning. Like you have to keep like there's so much. It's the little things that make you better. So as mentioned, when I get focused, I take in everything. As my heart rate goes up and as I get more focused, the arousal level in my body, my eyes go. Shoo, I want to take everything in like a. I don't know whether it's like a. I guess it'd be more like prey than a predator because prey's eyes go like this and predator's eyes are
Oh,
like this.
mhm.
Um, all this to say, it may have made me. Maybe I just found athletics because of the way my brain worked. I'm like, okay, I can understand a sports field. Like, you can take in a bunch of moving pieces at once and figure out the angle you need. I'm like the human protractor, baby. But if you give me a protractor, I'm like, I can take a measurement. I can't do any equations, but I'm just gonna be like that way. Just do that way,
Nice,
you know.
nice,
So
nice.
beyond that, I think because let's say, as mentioned, my parents are crazy academic. I think again, the way my brain works, this is why I've gone more towards this lane of the arts, like film and television. I just understand that more. It just makes more sense in my brain. Um, Opposed to, like, for example, my brother, he's written a lot of poetry, and I know he wants to write some novels and stuff. He's getting into acting as well, but
Nice.
that's his lane. Whereas, yeah, anything involving a bunch of things written down on paper and that's it. That's probably not, it's just so hard. It's just so taxing, you know? So yeah, I prefer the visual medium, I suppose.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And if people want to find you online, where can they go to be able to learn more about your films, see the Olympics and all this other thing?
Well, I mean, the Olympics are in Paris. Head over
Yeah.
there. Um, they'll be on CBC all summer and VNL, the international volleyball. I'll be calling all those games, the color commentary. I think my first short film is on Telus. You can it's buried, but search up my name, I guess. Um, Hit me up on Instagram. Say hi. I'm at Soonias, so that's at Soonias. Holler at your boy.
Sounds
And I'm amazed if you've made it this deep into the podcast. Thanks for hanging with us.
good. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much and have a great day.
You too. Miigwech.